Okay, so are you ready to dive into some spooky stuff today?
Always up for a good ghost hunt.
Well, today we're going to be looking at some videos that supposedly show poltergeist activity.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, we're going to try to figure out what's really going on. You know, are these like genuine paranormal events,
Right.
or are they just clever hoaxes?
I'm sure we'll find some of both.
Yeah, probably. I'm betting on mostly hoaxes, but you never know.
You never know.
Our source material for this deep dive is this YouTube video by Mr. Nightmare. It's called 10 of the Freakiest Alleged Poltergeists Caught on Video.
Okay.
And he's got some pretty wild stuff in here.
Yeah, from the title alone, it sounds like it.
Yeah, like chairs moving in empty theaters and objects flying off shelves, even what looks like a full-on ghost attack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So to help us analyze all this footage, I've got an expert here who knows a lot about visual media and how our minds can, like, sometimes be tricked by what we see.
Yeah, it's amazing how easily our brains can fill in the gaps and create patterns even when they're not really there.
It's true. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to get your take on all this.
Yeah, I'm excited to debunk some myths.
All right, well, let's jump right in with the first location, the Carlisle Castle Hotel.
Okay.
Now, this video shows 3 separate events: a see-through figure waving bottles falling out of a fridge and a glass suddenly shattering.
A classic ghostly trifecta.
So what are your initial thoughts on this one?
Well, you know, when it comes to those ghostly figures, tricks of the light are often at play.
Right.
Reflections, dust particles caught in the camera lens.
Yeah, it's easy to see a face in a random pattern.
Exactly. These things can easily create that illusion of a transparent form.
Yeah.
But as for the bottles and the glass, that's where things get a bit more interesting.
Yeah, because those are like classic poltergeist moves.
Exactly.
Like something's actually happening.
Right. It's a visual that just screams supernatural, but, you know, from an analytical perspective.
Right.
It's also one of the easier things to fake.
So your thing is someone could have like rigged those bottles to fall.
It's possible. Yeah. A thin fishing line, a nudge at the right moment, and boom.
Instant poltergeist.
Instant poltergeist.
So I guess the key here is to like look beyond the obvious, right? Like, what else is going on in the video?
Exactly. Are there any inconsistencies or clues that might point to a hoax?
Like, are there any suspicious characters lurking in the background?
Yeah, or look at the environment itself.
Right.
Is the fridge on an uneven surface, for example?
Ooh, good point.
Could vibrations from something else in the room be causing the objects to move?
That's true. Like,
Oh, yeah.
even if there's a totally normal explanation,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder if these little incidents, you know, whether they're intentional or not,
Right.
if they add to that whole creepy vibe of a place like Carlisle Castle, you know, a place that already has a reputation for being haunted.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, do you think people are more likely to see ghosts in places where they already expect to see ghosts?
Oh, without a doubt. The power of suggestion is huge.
Right.
If you believe a place is haunted, your mind is primed to interpret any strange event, no matter how small as evidence of paranormal activity.
It's like you're already halfway there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh.
So our next case takes us to a buffet restaurant, which honestly already sounds like a recipe for chaos,
Yeah, no kidding.
even without a poltergeist.
Right.
But this video shows a woman leaving her table, and suddenly plates and food are flying everywhere.
Flying food, that's a new one.
Yeah, it's a mess.
So if we're assuming this is a hoax for a second,
Right.
think about the logistics of that.
Oh man.
How do you rig that many objects to move in a crowded buffet
Right.
without anyone noticing?
That's a lot of fishing line.
That's a lot of fishing line,
Yeah.
yeah. And you've got people everywhere.
Yeah, and they all seem genuinely surprised
Right, that's what's so interesting about this one.
and scared.
Are those reactions real or are these people in on it?
Are they good actors?
Exactly. Are they playing their parts to create this convincing performance?
It's hard to say.
It's really tough to tell from the video alone.
Okay, next up, we're venturing into the land of haunted convenience stores,
Interesting.
which honestly is a concept I never really considered before, but apparently it's a thing.
I guess any place can be haunted if you believe it hard enough.
That's true. So in this clip, we see this pink object that seems to just float down an aisle while this guy's shopping.
Okay.
It's unsettling how quickly the mundane just turns bizarre.
Yeah, it's that unexpectedness that really gets you.
Yeah, totally. And the guy's reaction is great. He's just like, what is that floating?
Right, he seems genuinely freaked out.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, his reaction that kind of makes it more believable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It adds this layer of authenticity to the event.
Right.
Like you said, he's not overreacting. He's just genuinely confused,
Yeah.
which makes it more believable.
Now, what's interesting is there are a couple other convenience store clips in this YouTube video.
Oh, really?
So does seeing similar events in similar locations make you lean more towards paranormal activity? Or does it make you think there might be like a common method of hoaxing?
Right. Are we seeing a pattern of genuine phenomena?
Right.
Or are we just drawn to videos that fit this narrative that we already find interesting?
Right. Haunted convenience stores.
Exactly. Haunted convenience stores.
Okay, so in another convenience store clip, we see this employee who seems completely oblivious to objects sliding around on the floor behind him.
Oh, wow.
It's almost comical,
That's funny.
except for the fact that it's, happening in a supposedly haunted store.
Right. So are they in on it?
Yeah, are they just used to this kind of thing?
Or are they genuinely oblivious?
Yeah.
Sometimes our brains just filter out information that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Especially if we're focused on something else.
Yeah, like, have you ever been looking for something and you can't find it?
Oh, all the time.
And then it turns out it was right in front of you the whole time.
Yeah, it's like our brains just don't register it.
It's like our brains are playing tricks on us.
They are, yeah.
Okay, so now we've got this employee who's finally noticed what's going on and they just run away in fear.
Okay.
So does that make you think it was all an act? Or could it be like genuine fear finally kicking in?
It's tough to say. Sometimes the human element is the hardest part to decipher.
It's true. All right, let's switch gears and head over to the Brookside Theater,
Okay.
where we see a chair moving on its own and a table appearing to be pulled across the room.
Spooky.
Yeah, and it's extra creepy because this theater is rumored to have its own ghostly history.
Ooh. So there's that power of suggestion again.
Right, and to make things even more interesting, a medium claimed to have sensed a resident ghost in the theater.
Okay.
So that just adds another layer to it.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how much of what we perceive is influenced by what we already believe.
Totally. Like, if you're already expecting to see a ghost,
Right.
you're more likely to interpret any weird sound or movement as proof.
Our beliefs can definitely shape our perceptions.
This next video is intense. It's from the Malian Hotel, and it appears to show a full-on ghost attack.
Oh, wow. A ghost attack.
Yeah, chairs are moving, a door gets blocked, and it even looks like a woman is being physically assaulted.
Wow. That's pretty aggressive for a ghost.
Yeah, it's a little much.
So where did this video come from?
Yeah, what's the context here?
Could there be more to the story?
Like, could it be a staged scene from a movie or something?
Right, or a prank taken out of context?
It's hard to know without knowing the source.
Yeah, we need more information to really assess this one.
Okay, from a potential ghost attack to a library levitation.
The library.
Yeah, this next one takes us to a CCTV recording in a quiet library
Okay.
after hours.
After hours, okay.
And we see a book seemingly lift off a shelf and an object hanging from the ceiling starts spinning.
Interesting.
Now, you mentioned earlier that there are common methods for faking levitation.
Right.
Could you walk us through how those work?
Well, one common technique is using strings, especially if the object is levitating against a dark background where the strings are hard to see. Right.
Magnets can also create the illusion of levitation, either by attracting or repelling the object.
Okay, and what about forced perspective?
Ah, yes. Forced perspective is a visual trick that plays with our perception of depth and distance.
Okay.
So by carefully positioning the camera and the object, you can make something look larger, smaller, closer or farther away than it actually is.
So in the library video, could they have used forced perspective to make the book look like it was floating higher than it really was?
It's certainly possible, and they could even be using a combination of techniques.
Right.
The book might be attached to a thin wire that's digitally removed in post-production,
Oh,
and then they use magnets to make that other object spin.
So it's like a magic show, but instead of a stage, they're using a library.
Exactly, and just like a magic show, the goal is to create that sense of wonder and make us question what we're seeing.
Okay, moving on, we've got this video that relies heavily on suspense.
Okay.
It features this YouTuber who's investigating his dog's strange behavior.
And a mysterious knocking sound coming from his attic.
Creepy.
Yeah, it's like they're building up the tension.
Right.
Even though we don't actually see anything that spooky.
Yeah, but sound can be so powerful in creating a sense of unease.
Yeah, especially when it's like unexplained noises.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if the visuals are ambiguous, the right sound effects can really trigger a fear response in us.
Right, it's like those jump scare moments in horror movies
Exactly.
where they cut the sound right before a big bang.
Exactly. Those techniques are meant to manipulate our senses
Right.
and get a reaction from us.
And it works.
It definitely works.
So when we watch these poltergeist videos, we have to remember that sound.
Right.
Or even the lack of sound can be used to enhance the creep factor.
It's all part of the storytelling.
Okay, so have you ever had an experience where your pet was acting strangely?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like they were sensing something unseen?
I think most pet owners have those stories.
It's true. Like my cat will sometimes just stare at a blank wall,
Right.
and it's like, what are you looking at?
It makes you wonder if they're picking up on something we're not.
Totally. All right. Up next, we have a video that truly leaves us with more questions than answers.
Okay, sounds intriguing.
It's just a kitchen table that appears to move on its own.
Okay.
There's no context, no explanation.
So it's up to us to interpret it.
Exactly. What do you think is going on?
Well, it could be a hoax.
Right.
Could be a camera trick.
Right.
Or maybe something truly unexplainable.
Or maybe the table just has really good balance.
Maybe it's a magic table.
We're left to weigh the possibilities.
Right. It's a good reminder that not every mystery has a clear-cut solution.
Okay, our final stop takes us to an office building where security cameras captured a whirlwind of activity late at night.
Oh.
Objects are moving, doors are slamming, and the whole scene is just chaos.
Sounds like a busy night at the office.
Yeah, right. So, what makes this one interesting is that there were multiple witnesses,
Okay.
the security guards who were watching the cameras live.
Right, so they saw it happening in real time.
Exactly.
That does add a layer of credibility.
Yeah.
It's harder to dismiss multiple eyewitnesses.
But it also makes you wonder if it was a hoax, what would be the motivation?
That's a good question.
Like, could boredom or a desire to create a story lead to such an elaborate fabrication?
I mean, it's definitely possible people do strange things sometimes.
So we've examined 10 different videos, each with its own set of clues and questions.
Right.
What are some of the most compelling pieces of evidence you've noticed,
That's a great question.
both for and against the idea of genuine paranormal activity?
That's something we can delve into further in part 2 of our deep dives.
Okay, perfect. So stay tuned, folks. Our ghost hunt is just getting started.
Welcome back to our deep dive into alleged poltergeist activity.
We've seen some pretty spooky stuff, but now it's time to really start analyzing these videos.
Right.
See if we can find any patterns or inconsistencies, those unanswered questions that might give us some clues.
Exactly.
Okay, so one thing that I noticed is that there are a lot of falling objects in these videos.
Yeah. That's a common theme in poltergeist lore.
Right, like the bottles falling out of the fridge at the Carlisle Castle Hotel.
Uh-huh.
And then there were multiple convenience stores where things were just flying off the shelves.
Right. And don't forget that party supply store.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
Streamers and balloons going everywhere.
So does that frequency make it more or less likely to be paranormal activity?
That's the question, isn't it? On one hand, if these were all staged, you'd think the hoaxers would be a bit more creative.
Yeah, like mix it up a little.
Exactly. Why not a levitating hot dog or a self-playing piano?
Right. But then again, falling objects are pretty easy to fake.
Yeah, some well-placed fishing line, a timed push when no one's looking.
It wouldn't be that hard to create that effect.
Not at all. And we also have to remember that our brains are wired to pay attention to sudden movements.
Right, it's like a survival instinct.
Exactly. Back in the caveman days, a sudden movement could mean a predator was approaching.
So when we see an object suddenly fall off a shelf, our brains immediately go into alert mode.
Right, even if there's a perfectly normal explanation.
It's like our brains are trying to protect us.
In a way, yeah.
Do you think that the way these videos are edited could affect our perception of what's happening?
Oh, absolutely. The way a video is edited can make a huge difference in how we interpret it.
Right, like those slow motion replays in sports. They can make a normal play look super intense.
Or those jump scares in horror movies.
Oh yeah.
Where they cut the sound right before a big bang.
Those get me every time.
They get us all.
So basically, we have to remember that editing can be used to enhance or even create the illusion of paranormal activity.
It's a powerful tool.
Okay, let's talk about that library levitation.
The one with the floating book.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that there are ways to fake levitation. Can you walk us through how that works?
Sure. So one common method is using strings,
Okay.
especially if the object is levitating against a dark background where it's harder to see the strings.
Right.
Magnets can also be used to create the illusion of levitation. Okay, so they could be attracting or repelling the object.
Exactly. And then there's forced perspective.
I've heard that term, but I'm not really sure what it means.
So forced perspective is a visual trick that plays with our perception of depth and distance
Okay.
by carefully positioning the camera and the object
Right.
You can make something look larger, smaller, closer, or farther away than it really is.
So in the library video, is it possible that they used forced perspective to make that book look like it was floating higher than it actually was?
It's definitely possible, and they could even be using a combination of techniques.
Sneaky.
The book might be attached to a thin wire that's digitally removed in post-production,
Oh, wow.
and then they use magnets to make that other object spin.
So it's like a magic show, but they're using a library as their stage.
Exactly, and the goal is the same, to create a sense of wonder and make us question what we're seeing.
We've also seen a lot of different reactions from the people in these videos.
That's true. Some people seem genuinely terrified.
Right, and others seem totally unfazed. Like those employees who didn't even react to objects moving around them.
Yeah, do you think they're just used to weird stuff happening, or are they in on the joke?
It's hard to say, but it definitely highlights how our individual beliefs and experiences shape how we perceive the world. If you don't believe in ghosts, you're less likely to see one, even if it's right in front of you.
It's like that saying, seeing is believing, but believing is also seeing.
Exactly. Our minds are powerful things.
And they can sometimes lead us astray.
That's true. We have to be careful not to let our biases cloud our judgment.
So if we can't always trust our own eyes and ears, how do we approach these videos with a healthy dose of skepticism without completely ruling out the possibility that something strange might be happening?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one that we'll continue to explore in part 3 of our deep dive.
Don't go anywhere, folks. We're about to uncover the truth, or at least get a little bit closer to it. We're back for the final part of our poltergeist investigation. Are you ready to get to the bottom of this?
Let's do it. I think we've gathered enough evidence to make some informed conclusions.
So how do we approach these videos, with that healthy skepticism,
Yeah.
but without just dismissing the possibility that something weird might be happening?
Yeah, it's a tough balance.
It is.
We need to be critical thinkers, but also open to the unknown.
Right. So how do we find that sweet spot?
Well, one way is to look for patterns across multiple videos,
Okay.
but not just superficial similarities,
Not just like, oh, hey, there are falling objects in all these videos.
Right, exactly. We need to dig deeper. Like, let's say we're seeing objects moving in a way that seems physically impossible.
Right.
The first question we should ask is, could this be achieved with tricks or illusions? Like
Right.
the things we talked about earlier, strings, magnets, forced perspective.
Right. If those things could explain it, then that should be our primary theory.
Exactly. But even if something could be faked, doesn't necessarily mean it is fake.
Right. So then we need to look at the context.
Exactly who filmed the video, what are their motivations, is there any indication of editing or staging?
So, like, if the video came from a known prankster or someone who makes money from viral videos, we should be more skeptical.
Exactly. That would raise a red flag, and we also have to be mindful of our own biases,
Right. Are we predisposed to believe in ghosts, or are we total skeptics?
Right. Our own beliefs can influence how we interpret the evidence.
It's like that saying, we see what we want to see.
Exactly. Our minds are powerful, and they can sometimes lead us astray.
Okay, so what if, after all that critical thinking and analysis, we're still left with some videos that we just can't explain?
Well, those are the cases that keep us coming back for more.
They do.
Those unexplained mysteries, they're the ones that challenge our understanding of the world.
Why do you think we're so drawn to these mysteries, even if they creep us out a little?
I think it's just part of human nature, We're
Yeah.
curious beings. We want to understand the world around us. And the idea that there might be things out there that we can't explain, it's both fascinating and a little bit scary.
It's that sense of wonder and also that little bit of fear.
Exactly. It keeps us on the edge of our seats.
So after examining all these videos and discussing all the different possibilities, what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listeners?
I'd say keep an open mind.
Okay.
Stay curious, but always be critical.
I like that.
Don't be afraid to question what you see and hear, even if it seems convincing at first glance.
So basically be a healthy skeptic.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to uncover the next big paranormal mystery.
And that's our deep dive into the world of alleged poltergeists caught on camera. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.